So we're moving on to our next block, which is Flying Geese. This is the Flying Geese here. So they look like geese flying south and geese flying north. So what we're going to do with these is there's, as per our instruction sheet, you have to cut a 6.5 by 3.5 inch triangle, 4 of them, and then the fabric to go with it, which will go on the corners. So these are 3.5 inch squares. So on the back of all your 3.5 inch squares on the wrong side of the fabric, instead of doing like a half square triangle, we are just going to draw a line from corner to corner because we're not making a half square triangle. This is just a guide for us to sew along to create that flying geese. So I will do 2 triangles and then, 2 squares. I will put the line across the back and then get one of these B1s, 3.5, make sure on the right side you put 2 right sides together, start on the right hand side of it, corner, and you put that corner up into there and you will be sewing along that line so that when you sew it and you pull it back like that, that makes half of your flying geese. But you need to definitely pin this because you don't want it to slip slide around. So pin that on, go across from corner to corner, sew along that line. Take your pins out. Then what you need to do is you get your ruler and your cutter and you trim that excess off here. So basically when you iron that back, you're not going to have 3 layers of fabric. You're only going to have 1 layer like a normal block. So you put your quarter inch mark on the actual seam and then trim that bit off. Throw that in the bin. Go over to the iron that back, and that's half of your flying geese. Get your other one and put it up into your left-hand corner of your block. Pin it. You'll see that it overlaps slightly here. That's what it's supposed to do because it's creating a point. Take it to your machine. Sew along that white line, right across over to the top. Take your pins out, trim that excess, I should say, not excess. Take it to your ironing board, and I've actually sewn in the A1. I've sewn in the A1, so pull that off. And there's your first flying geese with a lovely point at the top. So you need to carry on and do the rest of them and then we'll come back. So we've finished those 4 combinations, the first colour combination, 4 of them. And we're just going to move on to the next colour combination, exactly the same. Make another 4 flying geese, attach that side on first and then the second side and iron it all back and you've got those, the next 4 colour combination flying geese. We've got our flying geese all made up, our two colour combinations. So just put them out on your board the way that they appear on your pattern. So one lot are going that way, so they're flying south, and these ones are flying north. What you need to do now is sew this line together and this line together, and then we'll come back after that. But where this is here, this little point here, that's just over 1/4 inch, so that when you actually sew it together, you're going to get that, with a 1/4 inch seam, you're going to get that nice point there. So just be really careful when you're actually sewing them together, that you're not actually sewing over that point. You want to get those lovely points with the flying geese. So when you sew them, when you sew this together, sew it on the side that's got the geese on the facing the top you're going to be sewing over, so that, and you can see where that point is. So just make sure that you don't sew over the top of that. You want to sew above it so you get that nice point. So I'm going to sew these together and I'll come back to you. We've got all these lovely points here, so you can see that they're all quite clear. You can see the points. So what we want to do is we want to iron all these now. And on the back you can see it's kind of almost pushing towards being ironed that way because of the point. So iron the seams over towards, against the, not against, flowing with the points. Then you'll get a nicer finish. Iron on the front, just stretch it out a little bit so you can get a nice flat. These ones also have lovely points. Once again, you can see the way it's flowing. So iron that. Going the other way, just check that it's the right way, yes. And now we're going to add these together and we're going to line up all of those seams, and you can see the seams have gone a different way and they will interlock quite well. So stressing again to pin on your seam just to make sure that your seams are going to match up and you're going to get a lovely corner in there. Okay, that's good. And the last one, get that nice interlock in there. Check that it's okay, it's all good. Put another couple of pins in. And we're going to sew that length, so if sewing line 1 together with line 2. Just press that out with your finger because they do get a little bit, you know, scrunch up a little bit with the pins. So just make sure it's nice and flat. Pull that pin out because that's not going to let me sew over the top of it. Make sure you're getting that good 1/4 inch seam and you're not making it a smaller seam. Very easy to do. Once again, I'm going to pull that pin out because it won't let me actually sew over it. Flatten it out with your fingers. It's a little bit tricky when you're going over those intersections because there's such a bulk there. So just take your time and make sure you get a good finish rather than trying to do everything in haste. So take all your pins out. And there is our beautiful Flying Geese block. I'll just finish ironing it. Iron it to whichever side, it doesn't really matter, that centre seam. Turn it over. Okay. Give it a really good press, and there's our Flying Geese block. The next step is to put your wadding, backing and block together as per back to basics, you know, using your fusible wadding. And I'm just going to show you where I actually quilted for this particular block. So using your ruler on your 1/2 inch, put your 1/2 inch marking on the edge of your blocks here and just draw a triangle. So I just went along and drew the sides, each side like this. And then you can turn it around and go down like that. Basic quilting, but effective. And then from the bottom. So you are forming, actually from the bottom you need to make it 3/4 because it's got to go into a, sewn into a quilt, so it's a 1/4 inch seam, 1/4 inch at the bottom. So 3/4 inch. From this one, it's only half because they're already, the 1/4 inch seam has already been taken in. So a 1/2 inch from there, but where it's got raw edge, it's got to go 3/4 inch. So 3/4 inch here for the bottom, 1/2 inch here. Do the sides. And then for in this part here, you want to do like a 1/4 inch from the outside of the triangle, your Flying Geese. So a 1/4 inch on the outside, 1/4 inch on the outside. Not a 1/4 inch, a 1/2 inch from the outside of the triangle. My mistake, sorry. 1/2 inch. And then what you want to do is from the bottom of the triangle, a 1/2 inch. So you're making like a little triangle in there. But yeah, well, it's a 3/4 of a triangle. It's not a full triangle. And then same here, 1/2 inch to bring out to the edge. That's 3/4 from the bottom because of that extra 1/4 inch. All right, so that's that one. I'll come back to you when I'm finished doing this. Next step is to quilt it on your lines. Now you'll see in this little corner here, in these little corners here, there's actually like a elongated rectangle. So you can, instead of sewing just that part, you can sew those, or that elongated triangle all together. So I'm going to do those first because they're in the middle of the quilt. Okay. Okay, so each one you've got to move it down. Just do a little back stitch. Back stitch at the end. Move on to the next one. So just go through and do all of the lines like that. I just wanted to point out that little elongated rectangle so you didn't have to stop and start too much. We'll come back to you once I've finished doing all this. So I'm at the last little bit. Finish that off. Bring over to your board. Cut any of your little bits of monopoly off. There's a few bits in this one because I've stopped and started quite a bit. Pretty much all that, and then bring it to the ironing board and give it a nice press. Beautiful. And that's your Flying Geese block.